Hello my smashing lot, it's Mega Gran here again with another episode from my vintage story. Well, if you remember from the last episode, I just built this forge and I quite liked it. I was quite happy with the way it turned out. I did procrastinate quite a bit, but I eventually started, and although the roof was quite a challenge, I was managing to finish it. Just a little bit more around the side and the back, and the outside would be done. I was quite chuffed with that. Well, the next job I wanted to do was to try and incorporate a basement. So I grabbed my shovel and I started digging, not really planning exactly how this was going to go. And as you know, when you don't plan things very well, they don't always turn out as you want them to. And I think I could say that this was one of those occasions. But I dug and went blindly on, thinking I was doing the right thing. I kept going up and down the stairs, just sort of like testing it out, you know, thinking, yeah, this is going to work, this is going to work. And each time I went up and down the stairs, I dug a little bit further. So it was developing nicely, or so I thought it was. I thought I'd dig down to the level of the lake bed, because I knew how deep the lake was. And I was quite sure that that would be deep enough for a basement underneath a smeltery. So I kept digging until I got to the gravel of the lake bed. Then I stayed at that level and started digging out the room. I didn't do the whole thing at first though, I just wanted to make a statement. This was going to be my cellar. So once I'd created a bit of a space to move around in, I put down a torch to keep it light and concentrated on the stairs. And it was at that point that I realised that this was just not going to work for me, because there was no headroom as I went round this corner, and I didn't want an open corner. So it wasn't so long after I dug out the stairs that I was filling them in. It obviously wasn't the right place. And I needed a new location to start my stairs. The opposite wall was the ideal location, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it in the first place. And it wasn't long before I had a nice set of stairs coming down into the cellar. And I made some temporary walls because I wasn't quite sure what sort of shape this was going to be. It probably would end up a square, but that's a bit boring. So I may end up making it a different shape, but we'd see. But for now, I was quite chuffed with the way it was developing. It was a good storage space. I did quite a bit of tidying up on the outside as well, getting rid of the original corner pillars, filling them in with fences. I still wanted the fences on the outside. Not quite sure why, I just felt safer with them there. It was a bit dicey going out with the lake frozen over. Anything could have run across and got me. But I was fortunate that even in the dark, nothing was out to get me on this night. That could have been very different if it was a rift night. And I think you know what I mean by now. The next thing I had to think about was how I was going to get my windmill in here. I had thought I would stick it through the tallest part of the roof, which was this bit here. But I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work. So first things first, I needed to make the hole. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to finish it off. I did want it to look neat and tidy, you know, like it was supposed to be there. I wanted it much higher up in the sky, so that would mean making some more axles. And I had everything that I needed, so that wasn't going to be a problem. And I did make a few other little changes around the place as I was designing and developing my forge. Things just didn't seem to fit anymore. And I was quite sure there'd be quite a few more changes before I finished it all. I did wonder whether I could have put this windmill together once I'd taken it down. But I persisted, as if I knew what I was doing. And it was going quite well. But I'd only put the axles in, so there was time yet for it all to go wrong. And at that point, I just put the quern back where it was, at the end of the axle, to be turned by the sails when there was a wind. I could get all the way around, and it just felt like a good place for it. The light would have to go though. That was definitely in the way. It was quite high up on the top of the smeltery, but I was determined to have my windmill as high up as I possibly could, and that would leave lots of space for some rather big sails. And then it was about getting the cogs in the right place. Took a couple of goes, but I got there in the end. Once I remembered it needed a block to sit on. And then once I got rid of the block it sat on, I could just add the sails. And it all came flooding back. It was so easy when you'd done it before. And each time I lengthened the sails, it went a bit faster. And I loved that whooshing noise as it sped up. So it made sense to make those sails even bigger. So off I went to see if I'd got the materials to make those sails even longer. And it was while I was looking down this hole, I noticed that there was sort of a type of framework around the axle. And I wondered if I could chisel out a hole in this top roof bit to allow the axle to go through and whether it would still turn. I did think that that might be a bit too complex and that none of the bits would work if they were interacting like that. I wasn't quite sure though, and I didn't ponder on it too much longer. So in my little storage area I went into my vessel with my twine in. I had some flax fibres and I had some twine already done. So it just took a bit of crafting in my crafting grid to firstly create the linen, and then by adding the sticks we could make the sails. I made as many as I could fit into my inventory, which as usual was stuffed full of all sorts. And then it was just a matter of getting back up on the roof and right-clicking them into place on the existing sails. And that was that done. As the night progressed, I kept popping out to have a look at it, to make sure it was still there and it was still rotating, as it would if there was wind, because it was in the right place, and I'd done something right for once. It was now December, and there was a crunchy layer of snow everywhere, and I kept coming out and looking up at this hole, wondering how I was going to make it look like it fitted. I kept going back to the thought of chiselling a hole in this roof bit so the axle could go through, but I really didn't know where to start. My next thought was having a go at surrounding it with upside down stairs, especially the bit near the ceiling. I could place the stairs upside down. They did look a bit one-sided though, and I could still see the sky when I looked up, so that wasn't very good. I wondered how it would look if I added some slabs on the underneath. So I got some to try it out. And they looked to be going on quite well once you'd got them in the right orientation. And I still thought it needed some more. And although I was okay with the shape of it, it still didn't seem to fit. I wondered if it was those two stair pieces at the top, so set out to change those for slabs as well. And it did look a bit better when I'd done. And then I thought maybe it needed to be out of the same material as the roof. I'd discovered some blue clay bricks, and I thought I might have a go and see whether they looked okay. They were the same colour as the roof tiles, but they were too modern, and I'd thought that when I tried to use them for the chimney. I soon got tired of putting these up and taking them down, and thinking about how to change it. I just didn't know what to do with it. So I thought I'd leave it for now, until something came to me. I'm sure it would. Things often do. So I got on with some other stuff in the meantime. I moved that lantern and attached that to the ceiling. I couldn't find the middle, so I put it in the nearest place that I could call the middle. And I made the stairs safe. The next time I came onto the server, it was the 6th of February. And there was still lots of snow everywhere. So I went out to remind myself where I'd gotten with my smeltery. There was still a lot to do. In particular, this bit where the axles came through. I thought I might even off the ceiling, and that might make it look a little bit better. But of course I'd used different blocks in different places, so it wasn't marrying up very well. I went back to upside down stairs actually, and those seemed to fit in there really well. And I was quite liking the way that was going, but I needed more clay bricks. But of course it wasn't as simple as crafting them in my crafting grid. I had to fire them as well. And I was quite surprised that I remembered how to do a pit kiln. So I got that underway and started some other little jobbies to progress my smeltery. One of those was deciding on what brick I was going to use for my floor. And that ended up being mud brick, because it was rough and ready, and I think it suited this smeltery floor. And when I got to the diagonal entrance, I thought I might leave it diagonal. But I did need to choose another block to go on the other side of it. And I did think I had some cobblestone left over. I did have some granite cobblestone. And I thought that might suit it very well, seeing as the walls were of granite cobblestone. So I put those in. And I quite liked the way that they looked. So I continued those for the whole of that little triangle. It didn't take too long before I'd finished all the mud brick flooring. I'd done quite a bit of work for this session, and I couldn't really face filling it with trunks and moving all the contents of my other basement over here. So I thought I'd leave that for now. I finished off the work with putting a fence in front, and I quite liked the space that it made. I did need to think about this bit though, and what I was going to do with it. But for now, I wanted to do something completely different. I'd been thinking a lot about furniture, but I hadn't got any nice blocks to practice on. But there were one or two hills behind my barn that did have some blocks I could practice with. So I set off to get myself some. It wasn't long before I realised that there wasn't just one colour of block in these hills, and I got quite excited at the thought of mixing these two colours to see if I could make something nice. Now, as some of you probably know, you have to do a checkerboard pattern when you're mining blocks if you want whole blocks instead of the little stones. And it's not a quick job doing this, and it was quite cold outside, and I was getting colder by the second. So I stayed as long as I could and just got 2 or 3 whole blocks before I started off for home to get warmed up. It didn't take me long because I was a short distance from home. That was my barn there and my chicken coop. And it felt really good to see my windmill working really well. I was still shivering quite a bit when I got in. So the first thing I did was to get a fire going. And it didn't take long before my temperature was coming back up again. And once I was warm enough, I got out my block, I placed one down, and I started chiseling. My thought was to do a simple occasional table. This is how it went. Well, that went so much better than I thought it would. As you can see, I struggled a bit with the legs at the beginning, but I got into my stride and it all came together at the end. I needed somewhere to put it. And I decided the jug would have to move because I wanted to put it right in front of the window. And once I'd placed it, I really, really liked it. And I could just see it with some flowers on top. So I went off to make some plant pots. My plant pots were ready, and also my blue clay bricks. So I put a plant pot on top and found some golden poppies. And it looked gorgeous. I loved it. Wow. I didn't think it was going to turn out as good as that. I really didn't. And I really liked the colours. So my next plan was to make a dining table and at least one chair to go with it. But it's pretty tiring work is all this chiseling. So I'll let you know how I got on with that next time, when I'll also be showing you how I got into the Bronze Age. So take care everybody, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.